in the agendas items.
You want to move that under appearance of citizens? Is that,
Yeah, that'd be good, if everyone agreed.
we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any other changes to the agenda and approval as submitted with the changes? Motion second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Appearance of citizens. If we have anyone here to come before this board for discussion about anything that's not on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on. We'll take up the request to review and possibly reconsider and redirect court fees. That's for CASA, and I think, Mayor, that's under your report.
Well, during this budget process, we had a lot of discussion about needed funds and various projects, and Robbie and I were reviewing a lot of the, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are several fees and litigation taxes, for example, that go into different funds where they are restricted in use. And so some of those accounts kind of build up really large, and we might have other needs for current projects, and instead of kind of waiting for things to materialize. So I reached out to Rex Lynch, the circuit court clerk, to see if he objected or would be interested in a review of all of the fees that are collected. This could also be a way of looking at, are we meeting current obligations, or is the money getting where it needs to be, which I think is going to be your point. But then also, are there some that we're collecting that are just building up in accounts that we could use for something today or next year or the year after? And we have several that are authorized. For instance, we have a capital improvement fund that for years should have been building up, as an example, but only a couple of years ago did we realize that that was just rolling into our general revenues instead of being dedicated. I mean, it wasn't being misappropriated or anything, but I'm saying it should have been going into a dedicated fund for capital needs, and it had not been. Do we want to keep that $3 going to a capital fund? Do we want to do something else with it? Then that was done via private act. Then there are some that are resolutions for litigation taxes that are authorized just via resolution by state statute. And so we have, several over time that the county has put in place. Some of them fund nonprofits. We know ASAP gets some funding. And so this is just an opportunity, I thought, to have a good review of all of those, issue a report to commission, and if there are some you want to look at or maybe redirect or keep everything as is, this might be a good opportunity.
I agree. Any discussion?
I guess I'd make a motion to move forward on this. We're just gonna say, yes, let's look at this and be able to make a knowledgeable decision based upon the facts we find.
Got a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Discussion. Commissioner Yeager.
Mayor, was Keisha here to speak on?
Yes, I
So-
think she,
okay.
do you want to speak, or she spoke to me about this at the YWCA domestic violence event, about funds that they should be receiving. Do you want to go ahead and speak on it? Yes.
My name is Keisha Waters. I'm the Executive Director of CASA of the Tennessee Heartland. And we've known for quite some time that there were some fees that should have been collected, and court fees, and distributed to a couple of agencies that are agencies like ours. We recruit and train volunteers to advocate for abused and neglected children who are in foster care. our agency and the CAC and a couple of other agencies, and I've been the director for about 4 years now, and we've not received the funds in that amount of time. And I know that there's legislation that directs commission to collect courts to collect these fees and then distribute it. So I just wanted to just let you know how important it is for us that we are able to benefit from these fees. Our agency provides at no cost to the citizen, their communities that we serve, an unduplicated service of advocacy for abused and neglected children. And the way we're able to not charge the courts or the citizens is by providing them with volunteers. And we recruit the volunteers, we train them, and then we supervise them. And it costs us about $750 per volunteer to do this. And some of the things that our volunteers do, we're changing the trajectory of many hurting families in our communities. And it's such an important role that our volunteers play, and the support from the county is very important to us. And so I just thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and just to Mayor Frank for looking into this. And I hope that, we can get this ball rolling again and start receiving some of the funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Tish.
Commissioner Chris?
Yeah, well, I think the motion doesn't really address her issue of not receiving the funds. I think the motion doesn't address her immediate issue of not receiving the funds that she should have been receiving. I think the law director is presently looking in and talking with the court clerk about those fees. And I was hoping he would be here so we could give her some kind of answer of where we are and where we stand on that. But I'll support the motion.
I would think that, given that we have a healthy fund balance in our general fund, and we have already supposed to have this money going in there, I would like to see how much we actually owe them, and if we can pay that money back, that's what's due them. If we're supposed to be giving that money to them for the last 4 years and hadn't got anything, if we've got, because that means that we actually collected it.
Yes,
It just went in
and the
not
clerks do, they actually put together an annual report of all the various fees that they collect, and if it has indeed been collected, which I'm sure if they were authorized to do so, they've done that. It may just be a breakdown in the process that happened in the switch of budget directors over time, where normally someone makes a request. I know we've had different clerks, so it could have just been a breakdown of the process, but I'm happy to work with Rex and Jay and Robbie and get this tracked down sooner rather than later, but, before we do a full review of all the various fees and taxes.
I just think it'd be proper is if we collected that,
Right.
for it to be going to that specific organization, that money is actually theirs.
Right,
That would be
right.
my thought. Yeah. Commissioner?
Well, the intent of my motion is we look into what has been collected, where it was supposed to be going, and whether it did or not. And then based upon the findings, then the commission can make a decision to resolve the issues as best we can. That was my intent.
Oh, okay. As long as that gets in the motion, yeah.
I've got,
Commissioner McCann?
Mayor, do you have any indication as to when this, was it a resolution for CASA?
I'm not familiar, and I haven't done a full review. I think Rex has already started a review, or did maybe many months ago, looking at some of these. I'm not familiar with theirs. He may be able to answer that here tonight, so.
Okay, well, I served on the board of directors for CASA for many years back in the 80s. And I know that the funds are needed, and if we owe it, we ought to pay it. I mean, it's just that simple, and the sooner we can get this review done, and find out, what might be owed to them. So I agree.
I'll just put it on the list here to check that one. I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
But I think it's a good idea to go through and work with the mayor and just look at all of them. But just like the one you're talking about there, I think it's Angela Metcalf, she takes care of our bookwork. And like last year, we collected about $7,800, which we turned over to the county. Now, what the budget office does, how they delegate it and send it, don't know if it went to the right place or not. But yeah, we do collect that, and we have a report, we've submitted it in, so. But, you know, I think it's a good to look at it, as long as it would just include myself and Jay and Angela, so we can all look at the resolutions, see what we can and what, because a lot of those codes are very strict on what you can and can't do with the money. And make sure the budget office is included, so the money is going the right place. We had a good meeting with, there she is, with ASAP a few weeks ago, talking about the litigation tax. And, you know, well, I think we came up with a good plan. We're gonna present later tonight how it's gonna, I think everybody will win on it. We just, my only concern was, I don't set the rates, you all set it, we'll collect whatever you set. We just gotta be careful. We can't keep piling on those litigation taxes before long. I think Commissioner Val was in the office a few months ago. He had I think a pocket knife that was recovered at a pawn shop or something. So he wanted to turn in I'm not sure a detainer warrant or the civil summons. And it was gonna cost him $200 to file a civil summons to get a $35, knife back. He said, just then keep it. So we gotta be careful about tacking too much on. It sounds easy, yeah, add it on the litigation tax, but we ain't careful, we just price ourselves out of business, so. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to look at it, make sure we're doing everything and the people are getting the money we're supposed to.
Ms. Metcalf, you raised your hand.
The resolution for the CASA was it was resolution number 10-357, and I'm assuming 2010.
That's what I thought.
So we've been collecting that money every year and turning it over to the county, so.
I actually remember that back in 2010. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is ASAP of Anderson. The rear board fines. Yeah, and I can give some explanation on that. Several times, we actually approved in the beer board that any fines collected would be sent to ASAP. We talked about this twice and approved it twice, but we've lost it in the minutes. So we need to actually just reconfirm that again because they couldn't find it in the minutes where we approved, and I think most people here remember that. So I would like to entertain a motion that that any of the beer board fines collected would be directed to ASAP.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
you.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to take up the ASAP litigation tax while Stephanie's here?
If that's all right with this committee.
That's a referral from last month's county commission.
Okay.
Last month, brought to you a $20 litigation tax. We've had a meeting with the circuit court clerk, myself, and Ms. Metcalf, Ms. Strutman. We reduced that down to $10, made it applicable to all courts except juvenile court and to all delinquent taxpayers. Each defendant in a delinquent taxpayer case. That's the changes. Otherwise, it's the same resolution, with the exception that you passed last month at $20. Any questions on it? Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wandell?
It's not on the agenda, is it? Should be old business. It was referral last month.
I was just gonna add it if you want.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, sir.
I'll make a motion to add the resolution 19-09-772 to reestablish and levy a litigation tax of $10 for the use and benefit of ASAP of Anderson County.
Second.
Have motion second. Discussion. And what that will do is that will replace the motion that was passed last month.
Last month. Yes, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll have proposal for senior center. Commissioner Meredith and Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you know that we're here on Budget Committee, we had a proposal by the mayor on the senior center move, but two things were going on at the same time. So Clinton City Council and the mayor passed something at council to offer to the county. So I'm not going to steal Mayor Burton's thunder. I'm going to let him tell you that offer to help our seniors. So, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Rick. First of all, I just want to say, I think it's our duty in the city, if we have an opportunity to partner with the county, to do so. And I think this is one of those times. And I think we have a pretty good history the last 10 years of working together to get things done. So what the city's going to offer, would like to offer is formally offer is for the senior center to go into the old Armory building for $1 a year. And looking at, if you can just kind of close your eyes maybe when I talk about this, is we would like to focus on the needs and the wants of what it would need to take to bring that building up to a senior center level, so to speak. And the city, I think, needs to focus on the needs. So, you know, of course, we're going to replace or repair the roof. We're going to take care of the HVAC, maybe even some new windows. But bottom line is, what I want to do is, and again, another example of partnership, is for the city to contribute up to $100,000 and ask the county to contribute the same amount. But we will focus more on the needs first, and y'all can focus on the wants. And I have some examples of that, and I'm just throwing out some things that we can do to really make the Armory look really, really good and something that we could be very proud of. I mentioned the roof, HVAC, and the windows for the city. The county, you know, you could update the bathrooms. You feel like you need to do that. You need to refurbish the kitchen. There was a kitchen there when it was the alternative school. Other things I would recommend is to lower the ceiling where the old gym is. And that will increase the energy efficiency in that area and be very cost effective for the seniors from an electric bill standpoint. I'd like to look at painting the exterior brick. I'm not a big fan of painting brick, but I've seen some that look fantastic. And I think that would give it a great facelift. I think we could even put vinyl on the floors, they're very cost effective now, the floating floors they call them, but the vinyl is very cheap and very durable. We could look at building some type of patio or gazebo between the building and Charles Severs, so our seniors have a place to go outside and enjoy the weather or just enjoy each other in that environment. I know there's going to be 2 objections, probably. There may be a few more, but of course we have the issue with the fair. And we've talked about this before. Usually the fair release would need about a month's time for them to operate. And they only need the front part of the building. The back offices, if you've been in there, I think you have 3 rooms on each side of the gym area. Then you have 5 or 6, I think, office spaces in the back. The fair would need all that front area. So, but you have the kitchen in the back that's open to be able to put the tables and all that there. But during that time, you know, there's really 2, I think, very good options. Number 1, Sheree could probably take a little vacation during that time. That's been a suggestion. But also, we have a community center. The city does. We've been very good, I think, as far as partnering with the senior center when they need a larger space for a lunch or a special program. So that would be available during that time, of course, no charge. And also, we have 16 county schools that are empty right there. And probably the most centrally located would be the Clinton Middle School gym. If they wanted to continue operations as a senior center during that time, right now it's the month of July, to use the middle school. And again, I would assume that would be no cost. The other one is we've talked to the Roane State people, and they gave us a timetable of 18 months. And I know that's not the most desirable date out there, but I think an 18-month period to solve something for a long-term solution for next 40 or 50 years and beyond, I don't think that's a very long time frame at all. You know, I use the example of we all like grants, but we don't get them right away. So you're not going to be getting money, but you'll potentially be able to save $500,000 by waiting this 18-month period and partnering with us for the senior center to go into the armory. And again, during this 18th-month period, if they're having the, you know, we've offered, and Cherie's taking us up on it, Christmas dinners, Easter dinners, Valentine dinners, special programs, we're more than happy to let them use the great room at the community center, which is big enough to suffice what their needs are during that period of time. I think, you know, we're going to have Roger, if you approve this and it goes forward, Roger to sit down with either Mayor Frank or someone else you may want to appoint to negotiate a contract, so everybody makes sure we're on the same page with this moving forward. And again, I just wrote down some benefits of this. I know the money will go towards programs for our seniors instead of maintenance and mortgage cost, and that's a big charge that I know Cherie right now, senior center is paying about $1,500 on the building they have today. If that $1,500 could go into more programs, maybe get Cherie some more help and go that route, I think it's going to be very beneficial for the seniors. We have a very nice parking area, very level parking area. You're in the middle of a beautiful park, which the seniors can enjoy. It's centrally located, and again, it's minimal operation cost. You think what it is, the cost going in today, saving the $500,000 that I'm hearing, you know, for the other location. But you're not thinking about 10 or 15 years down the road when the parking lot needs to be paved, the roof needs to be replaced, the HVAC needs to be replaced. A lot of things inside the building needs to be updated and replaced. A lot of those costs are going to be wiped away with the senior center going to the armory. And again, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you go somewhere else, but I think you're in a good position because at least now you have some options to choose from. So, any questions? Yes, Bill.
Would there be any possibility to start any work before this 18?
Well, I think we can. I was thinking about that today. We can do a lot of things externally. You know, if we have agreement signed and moving towards that date, you know, as far as the roof, the HVAC, the windows. You know, school's not always in session, so we'd have some opportunities to go inside and do some things that we want to do. So yes, I believe I am confident that we can do that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How concrete is that 18-month window for Run State? Are they?
It's as concrete as it can be. Now, there's always factors. You know, I kind of joke around a little bit. This urgent care that opened up last Thursday, we need that guy to build it, the TCAT. You know, we'd be in there 6 months ago. But there's always weather delays. There's always, you know, construction delays. I think they really pushed it out to that May date because that's the end of I think it's when they're going into their summer break. So it's a nice natural break for them to move out. Anybody else? Thank you, gentlemen. I promise I won't be here every
Thank you.
month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you know, the Budget Committee deferred this 30 days, the other offer. So I think it'd be appropriate, just to play fair, that we've deferred this to budget as well from you guys now that you've heard it. The Budget Committee can hear both proposals because I know the mayor's got to get some information for the budget. That way we're still on the same track and meet the deadline of the other offer as well.
Good idea.
I'll make a motion, we refer this issue to the Budget Committee.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Anderson?
Cherie, do you mind, do you want to comment one way or the other? I don't know if that's something we can do for deferral, but I'd be curious to hear.
There's a couple concerns I have. One is.
Come on up, Cherie, if you don't mind.
Sorry. There's a couple of concerns I have. One being, you know, I don't want to put my grants in jeopardy. That's the biggie. And I think the mayor received a letter from Aaron, did you not? I don't know if that's been shared with you all yet, but it has to be a continuous thing. The senior center and the Office on Aging has to be a continuous thing. There can't be any breaks. So I don't want to lose a grant for one thing. Another concern is, and Scott, if you don't care to help answer, so everything would have to be moved out?
Well, it'd just be in that front area.
The front area and the 2 rooms on the side,
Yes.
where our biggest things is
But
gonna
you
be.
have a very, very big space where the kitchen was and where it will be in that area to be able to push that back in.
So I have a concern about moving everything out. If it needs to be emptied in months, so that means we would have to start moving it out in June. Where would it all go? There's me, I can't lift a lot of stuff. How am I gonna get it all moved out? That's another concern. And then if it's gotta be empty for the whole month of July, and then I'd have to start moving it back in August. So, most of my volunteers are elderly. So, you know, that's a concern. Another concern is the meals for 30 days. There would be no meals for the seniors for 30 days. That's basically my biggest concerns, I guess.
Second harvest.
Second Harvest, I would probably lose my grant to Second Harvest. They come once a week, and it took me probably about 2.5 years to get that grant before I became county. They're not really good about delivering that food at a different address other than what's in the contract. So if we move, it can be changed, but for a temporary, I would have to really check on that. So I'm worried about that. So there are some concerns, but maybe something that can be worked, I don't know. That's my biggest ones, though. Moving things, losing grant. And I think that, I'm not sure that, how extensively the mayor talked with Aaron Bradley, but that was a concern I wanted to get cleared up before anything happened.
Mayor?
Well, first, this is an extremely generous offer from the city of Clinton, and I think what I can do, since this is going back to commission, is put together a pro-con, do some data gathering for you all as commissioners. For instance, you know, cost on the buildings, utilities, fine-tune some of these details with the mayor and Roger Hauk, what we're looking at in terms of maintenance and cost at the facilities, and then maybe some of, you know, the other, what we do, what it would look like if we did have to move out. The letter from Aaron Bradley did say that if we interrupted operations, that would put us in jeopardy, but it's not a 100%. We need to know what that looks like. So, you know, we need to drill down a little bit more on interruption of service and what that means, and when would the trigger point be for losing that grant funding. So I'll try to nail that down for you all and give you some good data to make a decision. So.
Mr. Yeager?
The motion is, did you say a referral to budget or a deferral?
Refer.
It's a referral to budget?
Defer.
I thought he said refer to budget. I will just want to make sure what, okay.
I'll make the motion again. I want to send this issue to the Budget Committee.
That's a referral,
Okay,
not a deferral.
okay.
We
Just wanna
couldn't
make clear-
discuss
I just want to be clear on
We
what,
couldn't discuss it as a deferral, so it's a referral.
okay.
Commissioner Meade?
I just want to, I make sure that I heard right, because this was a very generous offer from the city of Clinton. So the city's going to take care of getting the building up to speed. It's, the county's not going to be paying for the roof and the air conditioning and the windows. Is that correct?
That's, you know, as a leaseor or a rentor, that'd be the responsibility of the building owner, in my mind.
Yeah.
But make sure everybody's on the same page. I would encourage Mayor Frank and Roger to get together, all that spelled out. But if I was voting on today, Mr. Meade, that's exactly what I would do.
Okay. I will point out that the city of Oak Ridge, where that some of us represent, they built a senior center without any funding from the county at all. And so the fact that you would do this would be a very similar motion, a very similar activity. Supplying the building is really the biggest expense for running a senior center as far as facility availability goes. So, thank you.
Commissioner McCain?
I have a problem with the space. I know the Armory is a big building, but we can't go in there. I think there's 3 small offices. There's not one big enough to put a pool table in and be able to shoot pool. We've got a big, nice common area, but we can't put up any walls or anything there because the fair has to have that opened up, you know, when they are in there for that 2 weeks in July. So the space actually concerns me because, like I said, you've got 3 little offices that are not really like classrooms or anything like that. They're not big enough to handle no more than 8 to 10 people at a time. And some of our activities and some of the exercise classes and things like that, you know, there wouldn't be room for that if everything's, unless we could go in and actually put up some petitions in the common area there. So the space really concerns me, that there's just not enough space there.
Mayor Burton.
Robert, are you talking about, which classrooms are you speaking of? The ones in the back?
Yeah,
The ones that you
off
go
to
in.
The front of the building that faces the road, there's 2 or 3 offices down through there, a little classroom.
So you mean you walk in from the fair side, let's say, you walk in, you got the 3 classrooms on both sides. You're talking about the ones in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I don't remember, it's been a while since I've been back there, but I would guess it's more than, I mean, it's classroom size. I don't remember it being that small, but I think you bring up a good point. My suggestion would be if it goes through budget and gets on the agenda for the regular commission meeting, to have a day set up where y'all can come in and tour the building and see for yourself what space we have, because I would imagine the space we're offering is at least 3 times bigger than what you have now. And I think there'll be some flexibility there. But you bring up a good point. I think everybody needs to understand what we have and how it can be used. Thank you.
Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to thank Mayor Burton and the city council for this offer. I think it's great that we can potentially locate it in the middle of Clinton still and service everyone's needs. You know, I'm not sure if there's a pool table now in existence. I would not think so in that building you're in.
We had to break it down and store it,
Yeah.
make more room for the seniors.
So, I mean, there's not a pool table now, I guess is the point. But we could certainly build a room to put a pool table in if that's what the seniors want. I mean, I think that's what this commission can do. I think that kind of goes to what Mayor Burton was talking about, where we make decisions on how to design it the way the seniors would like to have it. Love the idea of the patio. You know, we still have a 205 main we got to sell, which we made a $600,000 plus investment in. So we've invested in the seniors once, and I'm sure we'll invest in them again. And I'm positive if we sell this building at 205 Main, we'll have money left over to help, you know, construct what we need to at this location. I'm gonna be in full support of the fairgrounds because I think it's a good message to work together. I find it hard to believe that any grant will be taken away if we're still operating. I don't think anyone's saying the seniors have to shut down for a full month. I mean, it was just a suggestion. Doesn't mean you have to stop operations. I mean, it's operating now in a very small footprint, been operating that way for quite a while now. So with the space at the senior Clinton Community Center and the money we would invest in this location, I think it's a good value. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Creasy.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I want to thank Mayor Burton for coming and giving us this generous offer from City Council, and that's miraculous cooperation. I'm very delighted. And your offer is generous, and that alone tells us that you're willing to work with the county to help the issues that Commissioner McCamey and Jerry brought up about that. I think that we're going to have good cooperation and work together to correct any issues that may be a stumbling block. And thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Any other discussion, comments? Comments from Commissioner White?
Just one quick thought. When the mayor was speaking, he was saying that we'd need 100,000 from the city and 100,000 from the county. I'm wondering what that 100,000 would be earmarked for.
Mayor Burton?
Well, the things that we could update the building for, I'm talking about the windows and the bathrooms, and refurbish the kitchens, and maybe do some flooring, painting the exterior of the building. I'm not saying it's gonna get up to 100,000, but at least to commit up to that.
Okay. I'm just trying to dot my i's, cross my t's.
Anything else? We have a motion to refer to budget for discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mayor Burton. Proposal to transfer the remaining acres not being used for construction of new convenience center, submitted by Tim Thompson, President, Anderson County Economic Development Association.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Tim?
Well, if you remember, about a few weeks ago, I came before you and you transferred nearly 30 acres in David Jones to Anderson County Development Corporation. We can market and take care of the sale of that. You've got 17.08 acres in the convenience center property, and there's around 9.25 acres that's not going to be used for the convenience center. I was proposing that you could also transfer that 9.25 acres to ACDC so we could also market it and be involved in the sale. In the past, we've kept, ACDC's kept $2,500 per acre when we sell property, but I'm going to propose, since only 5 of the 9 acres is usable, that we would just take $500 per acre that we would keep, and the rest, all of it would go to the county, because we're going to have to sell probably 4 of the acres that's under the power lines for probably less than what you actually paid for it, because you really can't do anything under power lines other than parking lots, and so it's really not usable. I'm thinking we could probably get possibly 2 sites out of that, of maybe 4.5 each, or else 1 9-acre site.
We have a motion, second. Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any potential buyers right now, or any idea? I know that's zoned industrial, but there's been so much interest from the neighbors in that area of what the Jerry Duncan's property is going to turn into, and then what the convenience center is going to look like. I know they'd be really anxious to hear about that property being
We've
sold.
got one small company that's been talking to us probably the last year and a half or so. That might take the whole 9 acres. It's just, he's just waiting to see what the actual price is going to be before he moves forward on it.
What do they can you tell us what they
It's just,
manufacture or
just
anything?
small manufacturing. It wouldn't be any issues with any air quality or anything like that. Probably not that many employees, just because you're not going to put that large of a building on that small a site, especially with a power line issue. So I think there's actually been two people that have expressed interest in it, so we'll just see what happens once we get possession of it. And 2, when we get to the point where we do have a sale, we want to make sure that the line that the county owns gives you enough land that you need for the convenience center right now. We don't want to take any more land than we would actually need.
Commissioner Creasy?
Yeah, and Tim, I'm not trying to throw cold water on what your proposal is, but when we bought that property, I saw that we were renting space in that area right around the corner at the intersection for the county clerk and the trustee and the early voting. And I felt that with that extra property, we could possibly build a new office for those units, the election commission. The election commission is also needing an office themselves and a place to store their machines. every time we talk about storing the machines, they like to be in the same building with the machines. We're running out of space here, as you know. I'm sort of, if there's some way we can use that property ourselves, I would prefer that we kept it and save money rather than pay rent, have our own facilities.
I agree with you. If the county needs it, you need to take care of your own needs first. And if that would be a logical location, that might be
That's
a
only
great
my
alternative
wish.
for it,
Yeah,
yeah.
that-
No, I agree, you
There's
take care of
16
your
of
county
us.
needs first.
Any other discussion? All in favor? What the motion is, you want to repeat your motion?
Yeah, I'm not sure that, I know that we were talking about going ahead and there was a $500 per acre thing that was discussed. There was a bunch of discussions, but I don't see anything written down that says what it is we're voting on.
It was to transfer the funds, I mean, the acreage
Yeah.
that wasn't used for the convenience center to ACDC so they could go ahead and market it. as industrial
And they would
property.
only charge $500 an acre for the market.
Right.
Instead of the normal 25 that we've done over the years, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
And is the sales price, does that come back to county commission for approval?
Yeah, all but 500 an acre on this, yeah.
The amount
What is
doesn't
it?
come
The
back.
amount.
I mean, you all sell it.
See,
And
we
then-
sell it, and then we keep 500 per acre, then the county gets the remainder of it per
No,
acre.
We don't have to vote on the amount that you all
No,
market it for.
we actually work with the law director on that. He's been involved in all of our ACDC sales over the years, so.
Mr. Chairman, I remember making the motion to purchase the property, and that was, I think I expressed my intent then that we could use a portion of it. We didn't need 17 acres for convenience center, but it was a convenient location, and I stressed then that it was, since it was in an industrial zone, that it could be marketed for industry. Because it's been an I-1 or I-2 zone.
I think it's I-2, yeah.
I-2 zone, you know, for a number of years, and it never moved any until we expressed an interest in it, and we purchased it, and we paid industrial price for it. And I thought it was just a given that it would go back to them, for them to market afterwards. Because if we decide to keep it, then we've got to rezone it to some other zone to do anything other than industry, and it abuts the industrial park that we have now. So it's, I just thought that it would be a given that we would go back to them to market.
One plus about that is as soon as a business is established there, we'll have a return on investment to pay back what we spend the taxpayers' money to recoup the cost of the property we paid initially. It may take years to do that, but at least it is a payback.
But even, Mr. Chairman, if we do transfer it to ACDC, if you decide that the county needs that, that's not going to be a problem, us deeding it back to the county. We won't charge you the $500. But anyway, just whatever works best for the county is what I'm all about, so.
You want to restate your motion?
Just
I
what's
know
on
it's
the-
proposed to transfer remaining acres not used for construction of the new convenience center. So all your motion is saying is we're going to transfer the unused
portion, which
to
is approximately 9 acres.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion?
Yeah, may I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Tim, so that I can figure in my own mind justification, there is the pros about your request, putting it back on the tax roll, but what sort of price do you expect that we would get for that 5 acres?
I'm thinking anywhere, we've got the property in David Jones listed about 20,000 an acre. I'm thinking anywhere from 20 to 25 an acre. But that's on the 5 acres, but the 4 that's not usable, you're probably going to have to go half price on that, I would think, maybe 10 or 12 an acre. So you're probably going to be losing a little bit of money. That's why we didn't want to do the whole 2,500 per acre on the sale, but just do the 500.
I guess when the kicker is when you say losing money is that we're just not selling the
What we actually- yeah,
unusable property for as much money.
As you
So,
paid for it, yeah.
So I think that's the key word.
Yeah.
Commissioner Anderson?
And to touch on that a little bit, we are going to be getting some funds from the city of Clinton when we vacate the current convenience center, and then when we sell that property to offset that overall cost, I think. So we're not going to be in a deficit, I think, on the convenience center property or losing money on that, I think, on that whole project.
Those funds at the city of Clinton, we've got those earmarked
For the
to
convenience
pay for
center.
the
But
convenience
yeah,
center.
but-
Any other discussion? Commissioner Wandale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all have a letter in our packet on page 5, but I'm going to read it real quick. It's only a short paragraph. This is from Tim Thompson, the president, who's standing before us of the ACEDA. Propose the transfer of the remaining 9.24 acres located in the 17.08 acres not being used for the construction of the new convenience center property located on Norris Freeway to the Anderson County Development Corporation for the purpose of negotiating the sale of Anderson County-owned industrial property to potential users. The Anderson County Development Corporation would only retain $500 instead of the usual $2,500 for each acre sold, with the remaining going to the Anderson County government. According to Robert Campbell and Associates, there is about 5 acres that are not impacted by the power line easements. Tim Thompson, President. Is that your motion, Robert?
Yes.
I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion by,
No.
one objection.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. Is this
Yeah.
property zoned industrial still?
It's zone industrial, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tim. District Attorney General David Clark.
Good evening. Thank you all for giving me a few minutes. I wanted to give you a brief update on where we stand with opioid litigation. It's been several months since I've done that, and there's a lot to talk about, and hard to do it in a limited period of time. But I sent a letter to all of you, and just to summarize, things are going very well, about as well as we could have imagined. There have been challenges and all sorts of successes since I was last with you. You probably heard that one of the manufacturers, Johnson & Johnson, was sued in Oklahoma. This was the first of the cases to go to trial. They lost. The plaintiffs won. And as a result of that, the manufacturers, of course, are concerned about the viability of these cases against them. You may have heard in the past few weeks, one of the manufacturers, Purdue Pharmaceutical, has filed bankruptcy. In the wake of the decision in Oklahoma, that has been expected, quite frankly, for a long time. One of the other manufacturers we have sued is also looking at bankruptcy. That also is not unexpected. We suspect that before this is over, they will probably all be in bankruptcy. There was before you an option to pursue a different course with a private law firm that was asking you to hire them. I presented a different option and suggested to you that the future was uncertain. What we were trying to do was unique and aggressive, but I thought it was the better path. You chose to do that, and I think you chose wisely. In the intervening year or so, things have gone very well for our lawsuit. Not much of anything has happened with respect to the other lawsuit that was contemplated. They joined the multi-state litigation in Ohio, and that case is in the same posture today as it was in that time when we were talking last. It's been at a stay. Since I was before you, we have taken 80 depositions of pharmaceutical company representatives across 21 states, obtained over 220 pages of discovery from various pharmaceutical manufacturers. There were 14 DAs who filed suit. Those 14 lawsuits were divided into 3 different suits, one in Upper East Tennessee, one in the Metro Knoxville area, and one in Middle Tennessee. The case in Upper East Tennessee was filed first. It's scheduled to go to trial early next year. It's in a good posture. The judge has instructed the pharmaceutical companies that they will not get a continuance. All of their motions to have the case dismissed have been denied. All of their efforts to stall discovery have been denied. And it appears that it's on a fast track toward trial. Our case in the Metro Knoxville area was dismissed by the trial judge. Since that time, we appealed the judge's decision to dismiss our case. To back up just a little bit, you will recall that we filed under a Tennessee statute called the Drug Dealer Liability Act. It was a unique statute that gave the DAs unique powers. It gave the DAs unique ways to seek damages and unique kinds of damages to seek. The judge in Upper East Tennessee said, yes, the DAs are fine in doing this. They have this authority. They've correctly interpreted the statute. The judge in Campbell County said, no, I think this case should be dismissed. The DAs do not have this authority. And as you recall, that was a subject of conversation when the law firm from Nashville was before you. They said, we don't think that Clark can do this. I said, I think I can, but reasonable minds can differ. As I said, aggressive, unique, new law. We appealed the judge's dismissal of our case to the Tennessee Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals unanimously overruled the judge in Campbell County and said, yes, they are right. They can file a lawsuit on this basis. And just because the pharmaceutical companies have offices in glass towers instead of back alleys does not mean that they are not drug dealers under this act. And they concluded that we were fine to press forward and that the companies were liable to damages or for damages to the counties and the DAs if we proved our case. So that's where we stand. The drug companies have now filed or are anticipated to file in the coming days request to the state Supreme Court to further appeal that decision. We expect that. I don't know that they will be granted permission to appeal, particularly in light of the unanimous decision from the Court of Appeals. But whether they are or not, this case was always destined to be in the Supreme Court for review. We're getting that review earlier, and I think that's a good thing as well. What may happen as a result of bankruptcy, you may ask? It's too early to tell, but one of the reasons that we wanted to pursue the Drug Dealer Liability Act is that it sounded in a unique way. The damages were unique because they were born of criminal law as opposed to civil law. And because of that, we have hired an attorney who is appearing in New York in the bankruptcy court where Purdue filed bankruptcy. And we will be arguing that unlike all of the other suits across the United States, the suits brought by Tennessee DAs are non-dischargeable in bankruptcy because they are fines in criminal law. And there's a provision in the bankruptcy code that such fines are not dischargeable. I don't know whether we will prevail. It will be another unique question. But if we prevail in that, we will stand alone among all the suits across the country in having a super priority for the remaining assets of the pharmaceutical manufacturers. That's sort of where we stand now. A lot of work is being done every day. We're appearing in court or in depositions or for discovery conferences somewhere across the country almost every day, and on most days in multiple places at the same time. So while you haven't heard a lot has been happening, and a lot of good things have been happening. The discovery that we have done of the pharmaceutical companies has been devastating. You saw an example of that where one of the national sales managers was joking about their making these opioid pain pills. And one of his subordinates said something to the effect of, yeah, it's like Doritos, don't worry about taking more of them, we'll make plenty. And the other person responded, yeah, it's as if people are addicted to these things. Oh, wait a minute, they are. So that sort of acknowledgement and callous joking about the human suffering and addiction that these pills have caused is something that the companies are going to have to stand to answer for before a court of law. That's what we saw in Oklahoma, and we believe that's what we're going to see in Tennessee. I'll be happy to address any questions that you may have to the extent that I'm able.
Yeah, I do. When you say we, and who, and this is a group of district attorneys, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, who goes to court and who does, you know, all the research, and what part do you play in this?
I'm a plaintiff in this case. So I'm not in court litigating, although I have been in court for motions and arguments at times. But the law firm that we hired in Nashville is doing this heavy lifting, and there are actually several law firms working on this case.
Okay.
There's a bankruptcy attorney in New York. There's a firm in Nashville. There's a firm in Knoxville. And help has been provided in various quarters, and it has to, because there's so many different issues. The firm that we have hired is extremely talented. The pharmaceutical manufacturers hired an attorney from D.C. who was a specialist in practicing before the United States Supreme Court to come to Knoxville to argue before the Court of Appeals. And frankly, he was outclassed. The bankruptcy attorney that we have hired is among the best in the nation. So we have a lot of good help. Our primary attorney has been named the lead negotiating counsel for local government plaintiffs for the entire nation. So we are at the negotiating table. We've had some negotiations with Purdue Pharmaceutical and some others. But we are being well represented, and a lot of people are working very hard.
So they've already got judgment against Purdue, this other group, and they're going into bankruptcy, and then their assets will be divided. So once our team gets judgment, we will be part of that same settlement?
Well, there's several things going on. The lawsuit in Oklahoma was not against Purdue, it was against Johnson & Johnson. But the threat is present and clear to Purdue Pharmaceuticals. The bankruptcy of Purdue is one issue. Another issue is what appears to be a concerted effort on the part of the owners of Purdue, the Sackler family, to secret billions of dollars out of the United States. Negotiations have involved how many billions would they bring back to the United States out of judgment-proof countries where they have tried to move these assets. Will the Sacklers be given bankruptcy protection when Purdue files for bankruptcy? Or are the Sacklers separate and distinct from their company? What priority will be given to the claims? All those questions will remain to be determined by the bankruptcy court. So there are multiple fights with the manufacturers for liability, and then with the other creditors and the manufacturers for the distribution of the assets. And the definition of what are the assets is a battle as well. Some companies might file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which would be to liquidate the company, essentially saying to the court, here are all of our bills, here are all of our assets, judge, divide them up as you will. or some may be interested in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which would involve them continuing to do business and trying to pay off their debts over time. And there are examples of that happening in the asbestos industry and the tobacco industry and so forth with respect to other toxic type liability claims in the past.
Like the talcum powder.
Yes, sir.
And I understand that the Sackler family has, what I understand in the news is that they're going to completely go out and not be involved in that business anymore. That's what I've heard in the news.
Yes, sir. They are not on the board of directors of Purdue Pharmaceutical currently, so they have already divested themselves of board seats, but assets are a separate matter. And this is going to be uncovered in painful detail. And as I told you at the beginning, I guess this was a 10-year process, and I would still maintain we're looking at another 9 years.
By their actions, it would make me think that they understand that they're going to lose.
I think they're very concerned, and rightfully so.
Mr. McCamey.
General, you keep referring to we, that's the district attorney generals, what did you
Yes.
say, 14 or 18?
14.
14. And the people that you all have hired, who pays for that? Does the state of Tennessee or
No,
individual counties?
no. There's no cost to the state of Tennessee or to the individual counties. This is something that they're handling on a contingency fee basis.
Okay.
That fee would be awarded by the court on the tail end.
Okay.
They are advancing all of the costs. So this has cost the taxpayers and the local government not one penny.
Good deal.
Anything else for General? Thank you very much. for
Thank
the
you all.
update.
I'll be happy in the future to address questions. You may read news items. Feel free to contact me, and I'll try and come back periodically to give you these sorts of updates as we progress.
Thank you.
Nathan, you're up next. Establishment of primary relief ambulance service for convalescent transport.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time. Really, I didn't come to get a vote on something, but to get feedback and opinion from this committee as well. So we have started to experience an increased issue of meeting the demand on convalescent transport. I've had some facilities that have reached out to us and also citizens who are at their home requiring transport as well, having difficulty of scheduling their transports primarily to doctor's office visits through our agency. And a big part of that is just based on the available resources we have and the needs that they have and in conflict with other needs that we're already meeting. So talking with the facilities, the two facilities that have called me is NHC in Oak Ridge and the Waters here in Clinton. They've asked if there is a simpler mechanism or simpler way if we couldn't meet the need that they could call someone else. The way it's set up now is they call us. If we can meet the need, great, then we schedule it. If we can't, they do take the opportunity sometimes to reschedule on their end to meet what we're available to do, but then sometimes that's not as easily done. They ask if they can call another service, which we are willing to oblige, and the resolution does account for that. They are running into issues where they can't find another service to do it. This would allow them, if they do find a second service to do it, that service has to call us for approval. So the facilities are wondering if there's a way for us to maybe have one less step for them to have to go through. One of the easiest way in my mind was to establish some kind of primary, secondary service for convalescent calls so that they wouldn't have to do that additional step. So if they call us and we can't do it, they can't change it, that they say, hey, you can call this other service. They're established at the secondary service. They don't have to call us back for another approval. It just kind of helps them with their process. That's really what the manager at NHC, his whole goal of our conversation was to be able to do that. So what is it going to take to do that? Well, a couple of things really in my mind. One, it would have to take possibly some kind of change in our resolution. I briefly reached out to Jay on this, about changing the resolution So I would work with Jay on that part. And then secondly would be identifying who that secondary service is going to be. So coming up with whatever parameters that we want as a county to do this, and then going out, and whether it's by bid, which I'm not saying we're going to get money per se for, but here's the standards, who can meet it, and then how are we going to award that to who? Trying to come up with some kind of fair way to establish who that's going to be as our primary backup. Again, this is targeting on the convalescent side, those people that have scheduled transports. I didn't want to go ahead and start investing a lot of time into doing all of those measures if there was no interest from at least part of the commission board. So that's why I felt that this was the committee, the best bring that to be able to see what questions you might have or feedback or comments that you would like to give me on the requests that I've received. And I do apologize, I did not send anything in advance. I did not put anything for you guys to have more time to consider this as well, so I do apologize on that.
Commissioner Yeager.
Thank you. How many convalescent transport vehicles do we have?
We have up to 4. They're not always staffed. We have some people in orientation, and if when we get them done early November, then we would have 4, but they run on different schedules. So 2 trucks work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 other trucks work Monday through Friday. And
So
I have 1 truck that works Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
When everybody's trained, you'll still need a secondary service?
I do believe so. The issue in the past was we were using 911. Actually, we still are to a much less frequency. We were using 911 ambulances for convalescents. Trying to pull back on that, we can't meet the demand that we used to have because we're trying to keep our 911 trucks more available for 911 calls.
Right.
So we have decreased that, which has caused part of this issue as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner McCamey.
Nathan, today is Monday. If I scheduled a convalescent for Thursday at 11 o'clock, are you going to be there? Or does it depend on whether or not you're running emergencies and you have to cancel?
Depending on what is already on the schedule, we do have people that call, and it might be a month and a half before we can put them on the schedule because of what we already have scheduled. That being said, even if we had that many emergencies on that day, and if all we had left, if all of our 911 trucks are on an emergency and another emergency comes in, and we have a convalescent truck available, we're going to send them to that emergency call,
Right.
not to your scheduled call. So does that happen? Yes, it does. I don't think it happens as frequently as it has historically, but it might happen. Correct.
Well, one thing that I would suggest is that we don't allow anybody to charge more than we charge. I mean, you had said some kind of parameter type bid or something, but I just think, you know, if they're going to have to use an outside service, that service should not be allowed to charge any more than our normal charge would be for that.
Okay.
So that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're talking with these other services.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Commissioner Wandell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nathan, so will this help reduce going code white?
I don't think it'll help reduce going code white very much at all. No. We go code white, it's primarily because of 911 calls. It might help because we may look at doing less and less with our 911 trucks on convalescent calls.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, again, you know what you're doing. I think it would help have less code whites because even if you had one convalescent going on and there's unfortunately 3 or 4 911 calls and your one's on a convalescent call, then that puts you probably in a cold white. Nobody's fault. It's just the way accidents happen. I think you know, I just would like to, I'd like to see us have staff available. I mean, I know you do too. You're not
Yes,
doing
sir.
anything intentionally,
Yes,
not
sir.
to service people. You do a great job, and so is your
Thank
staff.
you, sir.
So I would probably have to support going for a convalescent service, just for convalescent. And to Commissioner McCamey's point, certainly not charging more than what we're charging. I mean, we just had a rate increase a year ago or so anyway, so I find it hard to believe some would be more expensive than us. Could be, I don't know. We're pretty low, I guess. I don't know everyone's pricing. Would you put it out as a, is it possible you could put this out and then the prices come in cheaper?
In regards to them, the
Just
fees that
convalescent.
they charge?
Yes.
I don't think so. Now, private ambulance services are less willing to share what their costs are, but hearing from people that have used private ambulance services, they're not cheaper.
Okay. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Thanks, Chief Chairman.
So the direction, are you asking us to,
I'm not asking to vote. I really, if I came with this idea and this group was saying that you were against it, I wasn't going to invest the time in it. Now, hearing the feedback, to bring a possible additional solution for our service, for the people and I'm not guaranteeing that this is gonna solve it. We have plenty of times that the hospital and facilities have called other services and can't find anybody to take it. And we've had people wait for days in the hospital because they have a long-distance transport and nobody else will take it. None of the privates will take it, none of the other counties will take it, and they'll wait days for us to be able to accommodate their need.
so if we did an aye vote, that would just be that this committee supports your idea to go forward?
And we'll, of course, we'll come back to this committee and present what we've worked on, what I've worked with Jay on, and the mayor's feedback as well on that information so that you guys can see that before anything's sent out.
Commissioner James?
I'm not getting the picture. Would this be something that we would hire somebody to do, a company to do this? Or would we employ more people under your program?
No, sir. It basically, our county resolution, the way it's set up is we are the ones to provide it. Case by case, we can give a call away. This is making it easier for the facilities, instead of it being case by case, it eliminates one step in the facilities process when we can't meet their need. So we're not necessarily, I guess we are approving a secondary service, but there's not going to be, we're not paying them and they're not paying us. So there's no transfer of funds between the companies. It's just creating a easier process for the facilities and the citizens to establish possible convalescent transport.
So you wouldn't have to have additional money or employees to provide this?
To do this, no, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just a show of hands or an aye vote to say that we would, if this works as he's proposed, that it'd be beneficial to the county. Does everybody agree with that?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Policy of posted monuments or signs on county property. Mayor Frank.
I think I was creaking when I got up. This came about, there was a request by a citizen who wanted to post a memorial to her son. It was a couple, actually, that made the request. You all control monuments on county property. What I ended up doing, and I had emailed some of you all, I actually emailed the family back and said that, you know, in keeping with their right to assemble, you know, a constitutional right, that they could set a time to memorialize their son at the county property, but that as far as any kind of posted memorial, that would need to be a decision made by commission. I'm not aware, I think I shot an email to Jay, this has been a long time, I don't think there is any county policy about this, although in practice, I will say that from the mayor's office, our long-standing understanding has been it's county property and it's for county purposes only. And so, for instance, when we have folks that bring in things that they've wanted to post or sell or things like that, we've told them, you know, you can't do that unless you go to county commission and ask permission. So I don't know if we want to actually do an official policy or not. This is just on the agenda to talk about that. If you want to offer up opportunities, or if you want to just leave it as it's for county purposes only, unless at a case-by-case basis you want to come to commission, however you all want to do it.
Any suggestions? Commissioner McCamey?
Mr. Chairman, I was a little uncomfortable with when that couple appeared before us. You know, I mean, you have to show sympathy for somebody that's lost a child. But at the same time, you start putting up permanent monuments and all that on county property, it could get out of hand. And I think the policy that we are going by now is fine. We just don't allow it. County property is for county purposes.
I agree.
Commissioner Anderson?
Do we have anything in place as far as veterans? As far as like veteran memorials or anything is concerned, do you think it'd help if we had some language saying, you know, maybe outside of military veterans or something like that? Just flat, no?
We take those on a case-by-case basis to county commission only.
Okay.
And that's our policy now.
Yep.
So,
I don't think we need anything new.
so the motion is continue as we have it now.
Yeah.
Is that
That
correct?
requires a motion.
Yeah, I don't think it requires a motion. If we don't take any action, that's the policy now, is that we take each one on a case-by-case basis. And that we just don't allow it. There's no policy that allows it at this time.
The policy would remain in effect as it is unless we voted to change it.
Right.
Okay. And seeing no motion to change it.
Sure. And I certainly have compassion for them, but I also understand if you change the existing policy, then there's probably no limit to you know, the number of displays that folks would want to request to put on county property. I mean, this is a public facility where folks come in. I mean, there could be any number of displays that folks might want to post in the yard of the courthouse, or, so I understand keeping a, you know, a tight rein on it, so.
Okay.
I know we dealt with number 2. The first item there, I wanted to make you aware, we had, as you know, Clerk Lynch was doing an upgrade for the filing system in juvenile court. And part of that process was a requirement to have a affirmation, a structural review that additional weight could be added to that facility safely. And that is something that the vendor required. And so Roger and I discussed getting a company, a civil and environmental consultant, to come in and give us the review that was needed for that particular project. In the meantime, we also had moved forward with the ESG project and the engineering. The architect came to me and expressed concern about the archives on the 3rd floor, knowing that the 3rd floor in that area was originally designed in 1965 to be a jail. And so, since we were already looking at the clerk's facility, and the architect expressed concern about how high the books are stacked in there and the weight, we said, let's go ahead and look then at the archives, let's look at the vault, and then there's also another area in the Jolly Building where the schools have all of their historic records for the students that they're required to keep. So we did do a review of all of those areas. The project for Mr. Lynch was fine and approved, and that project has moved forward. All the requirements were met. However, I'm here to report to you on the third floor of the Jolly Building, the second floor of the courthouse, and then most critically, the archives. The third floor of the Jolly Building, they said that, and when we're talking about architectural design, so when an architect designs a building, they design it with a purpose. And so they frame it and design it for a certain load. The Jolly Building, where the schools have their files stored, they said there is an allowable live load of 125 pounds per square foot, and that could be safely applied in that area. So we can store in that area, but we've got to go in and double check that it's spaced at the appropriate space that the engineers say complies with the architectural design. We don't really have a big issue there. However, the vault was built with a 65 pound per square foot load. So we're okay, but we're going to have to remove some of the files and space them according to the structural design. And actually, the clerk is already helping with that because he's already removed a lot of records there and has moved them to the DARC. So that kind of has been a good project that just was coincidental, but a good thing. The critical item that I'm here to ask you to allow or authorize Roger and I to come up with at least a temporary solution, and for you all to help us as we put together some kind of plan, that's with the archives. The fourth, and I'm going to read directly from their review, the fourth area, the former jail area for the courthouse on the third floor. This area was discovered to have the lightest floor framing sections of those evaluated. Based on an analysis of the existing floor system, it was determined that an allowable live load of 50 pounds per square foot could be safely applied. The current, just for comparison, the current building codes require 40 pounds per square foot for a live load for jail space. The recommended live load for file storage areas is 250 pounds per square foot. And we're probably pushing that and a whole lot more because we're beyond filing cabinets in many of those areas, as I know some of you have been in there and seen the archives books themselves, how heavy they are. So based on a standard file cabinet size, this allowable floor loading would be met if the cabinets are placed such that there are no more than 2 drawer cabinets in 100 square feet of floor space. So in other words, in talking to the architect, we really need to be on the bottom floor. We need concrete, grade, slab. I discussed various options, and the architect reiterated, Mayor Frank, concrete, grade, slab, put it anywhere on a bottom level, but you cannot have it, especially with this design. They actually went back, the structural engineer and the architect, the civil and environmental consultant along with the architect went back, looked at the original plans. Those were by Martin, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it was Lide, L-I-D-E. He was architect, 1965. They also looked at the original architectural plans of the Jolly Building from Goodstein, Hans, Shore, and Associates from 1981. So Roger and I would like your blessing, and I say that because when you get together with people and you start talking about space, I would like it to be more than just Mayor Frank and Roger are understanding the critical nature of this. I would like your authorization to say this is a critical priority. We've got to move on it. It keeps me up at night now that I know the load that we have in there, and we need to make something happen. So,
Commissioner McCamey.
Could we flip the voting machines and archives?
I could look into the weight on that, but we also, earlier this evening, when Commissioner Creasy brought the issue up of the machines, back in the day, they were in Oak Ridge, if I'm not mistaken, and we could come up with a great security system and put them in Oak Ridge. There is a lot of space over there. We need to do something with some of that space. That's an option, but those are things that we would like to just be able to discuss and have commission backing that this is a priority and we're not just out there on our own. This is a critical priority.
Well, we could always put the voting machines at 205 South Main and let the whole election commission move up there with their machines. They've got offices in the front. But we need that floor space on the ground floor for our archives.
Well, we can come back with several options.
The voting machines are not that heavy. They just fold up like a suitcase, so, you know, they can't be that heavy.
No, they're not gonna be a problem. At 50 pounds per square feet, at a 10 by 10 foot area, which is 100 square feet, that's 5,000 pounds you can put there in every 10 feet by 10 feet. So we're not talking about, you gotta be careful when you walk up there because the floor is gonna cave in or anything. 50 pounds per square foot is actually a pretty big load. Probably your house is not made to that standard.
Any discussion, or I think she's asking for a direction.
Well, it sounds like we need to move these archives to a place where the floor loading is not a major issue. Trying to skirt the very edge of a floor loading thing, and then being concerned about, well, you can have this much weight, but it also has to be distributed exactly right, and it gets very complex. Whereas if you go to a solid concrete floor, the requirements to absolutely be sure you have a safe loading is relatively simple.
Well, and I'm not, and maybe Roger can speak to this a little bit better. I cannot remember the exact verbiage from the architect, but he was very familiar with all of this, and he said, you know, to give you an idea, a normal library with shelving so high is so many pounds. He said, Mayor Frank, you know, in some areas, you're almost to the ceiling, and you have some of these books on there. And so, you know, he was, get on it, was his recommendation. Or you may find your third floor on the first floor of this building.
Commissioner Creasy.
The fact that we know, now we have to
Yes.
act.
Yeah.
And
And
you
I think we can come up with something, you know, anytime we have to move, not everyone is happy, but we will work our hardest to come up with some ideas and plans. But, you know, I'm only wanting a motion that you recognize that it's critical, and you're giving Roger and I the authority to work with the departments on at least an interim plan.
That's my motion.
Okay.
Have motion and second by Commissioner McCamey and second by Commissioner Jameson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners. And lastly, I'll just be real brief. On the ESG, after we executed the engagement, they've had their team on site doing the full engineering. Roger and I on October 4th had a 30% engineering review, and on October 23rd, we will have a 60% review. So you've probably seen them around, or maybe heard some folks talking about them being around doing work, but I just wanted to let you know that that was ongoing, and we should have something to report to you next month. Then the Glen Alpine Convenience Center, I know Commissioner McCamey serves on the Solid Waste Board, and Commissioner Anderson was in attendance. That project is on schedule. If you haven't been up there, The pads have been poured. We're starting on the attendant building. We've been working with a group there in the community to make sure that the aesthetics of the site are in keeping with the area. The paving is not final, but they have put down the initial layers. They've started the curbing, and so it's all moving along, and we should be able to be on track. No issues there to report. And then I wanted to let you know, over the years where we talked about expanding our recycling program, the way things are, originally I think we had looked at making the site up at Glen Alpine the recycling center. The recycling center is at Blockhouse Valley, and as it looks like we're going to stay at Blockhouse Valley, we are looking at perhaps modernizing that site. It's not the prettiest of sites, so we're looking at doing some things that are low budget but will improve the site in terms of use for the people, but also look better for folks that live in that particular area, and maybe start to envision what could be added to it in the long term. So we are doing a little bit of work there, and I just wanted to make you aware of that. If you see any activities going on down there, we're trying to see what we can do to improve that facility. And that's really all I have.
Thank you. Anything else for the mayor? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, Jeff Trabaka is solid waste director, and he does an excellent job.
He does.
I mean, he is very accommodating. Anything that the board brings before him, he's very thorough and comes back with recommendations. And we talked about this in solid waste last week when we met, but I just want to recognize him as he's an excellent employee and does a super job.
I agree.
He's also MacGyver, so
That's true.
he can take a dollar further than anybody I know. In fact, I don't know if you've seen his vehicles, but they're not on the imperative or I can't remember what the next level is. What's the next one?
Critical.
Essential. He hasn't put the vehicles on either of those capital lists. And John Vickery, he's like, Mayor, that S10 is on its last legs. And I called Jeff and I said, why aren't you on the imperative report? And he was like, Mayor, all I need to do is either get a new lift and she can keep on going. She can, okay, I'm asking. So he does a really good job of stretching the dollar, the tax dollar, as far as he can.
Sure does. Ethics Committee. Guidelines deferred from September operations meeting. Jay, have you got something on that?
I just have the draft now. The ethics committee met, they couldn't come to any consensus on anything. You've got before you, let's see, draft one. That's the initial one that came out, the ethics committee, the second to the last meeting. Then draft two is the one is that the one Commissioner Meade drafted? Is that?
No, well, what it is that the draft two is based upon comments made in the ethics committee meeting.
Draft two is comments, and then you've got the one that's currently in place it's labeled current. Then you've got a working copy that I just put together in case you wanted to fill in the blanks. I think the very last one is your current ethics policy. From what I can tell, the ethics commission wants to disband. There is no requirement in Tennessee state law that we have an ethics commission. I understand their concerns. They don't want to sit in judgment of their peers. They only met twice that I know of. It puts everybody in a very contentious position, and it really doesn't do anything. These things either are referred to the department head for the department head to handle, the elected official to handle. They come to me for an ouster investigation. They go to the district attorney general for a criminal investigation. There really is no need for an ethics commission. I agree with them. Or they may go to the state ethics commission. They, in some cases, I've seen people refer them to the state election commission, but they really don't get involved in that. But I think draft 1 and draft 2 take the ethics commission out of it, and I'm all for that. They don't seem to have really a mission here. But if these cases are looked at, we wanted to put some kind of checks and balances on whoever does it. There always seems to be an issue with the term ombudsman. We've taken that out. And we wanted to, in bold on, let's see, I'm looking at draft 2, those cases that are dismissed by whoever does the review, that person is going to come to the county commission chair and say, hey, we dismissed this case. We want you to know about it. We don't want to bring it to a vote. A lot of these things are extremely embarrassing and they're frivolous. They have no merit to them whatsoever. They're done for political purposes, and we don't want to ruin somebody's credibility or their livelihood if it's certainly not needed. Some of them are serious. We've seen a couple of serious ones, and those are brought to county commission for censure resolutions. You've seen one of those. They're sent to Mr. Clark for criminal prosecution, General Clark. And those options are listed here as in Section 8 of the enforcement options. But it does put a checks and balances as to whoever does these reviews of these cases. It has to be signed off on by the county commission chair. Now, this doesn't mean that there's a public vote on this. I want you to fully understand that. We're not going to come before this body and we're going to say, okay, this is the evidence, this is not, and ask you to put it to a vote. I don't think that's proper. Most of the time, if there is a case, those cases are simply going to be referred to you'll see the enforcement options under Section 8. They're going to be referred to the law director for a legal opinion. You're going to come to a county legislative body for a censure resolution. You're going to send it to the departmental official or the supervisor for them to take action on it. A lot of those are picked up right off the bat by the supervisor or the elected official. Or it's going to go over to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution, or cases that we have from time to time, it goes to the comptroller's fraud department. It streamlines those enforcement options, gives distinct avenues for these cases to where to go, and there is a checks and balances system on it. But any questions, I can help you with. I can't. Yes, sir.
I just want to make a couple of comments. Okay, the current policy was based upon a CTAS guidance, which has since been changed.
Yeah, it was a template.
Okay, there was a template that they sent out, and we basically followed their template. But specifically, one of the things that changed is CTAS no longer recommends having an ethics committee. Yeah, I guess it still allows it, but they don't recommend it anymore. In talking to those people that I have in Nashville, it's really considered to be a problem. Nearly anything you would discuss in an ethics committee meeting is rife with problems of personal privacy violations and liability to the county. And so it gives you vulnerabilities without any real benefits. I'd like to make a motion for us to recommend to the full commission draft 2 for the following reason. It removes the ethics committee as has been requested by the ethics committee. It provides a clear process to handle complaints fairly and with due process and proper privacy things in place. It avoids significant legal vulnerabilities because it avoids public discussion of these things in county meetings before the county really needs to take a public position. It provides safeguards to ensure that all issues are being received, screened, and lawfully handled, and it provides a process to make sure that that happens. And so I think that's important. Now, it sends the complaints to the law director, and if the law director does, he refers those to where they need to go. In some cases, If he decides that no action needs to be taken or that it's not good, he then will talk with the chair of the commission to get concurrence on those. So there's no opportunity for any one person to dismiss some kind of complaint. It also ensures that complaints are kept private and not public records until the time is right that they have to come into the public arena. And so I think that's it also, by adding the references for the current state law, it brought us a little bit better into compliance with current state law, keeping in mind that any policy that lists the current TCA sections that apply can change the next time the legislature passes a bill. But we also can change these policies as necessary to keep them up to date. But again, it's my recommendation that we adopt draft 2 for those reasons. Thank you.
I second that.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion? Commissioner Wendell.
I don't have any problem with draft 2. It just, it says if the law director is the subject of the complaint, the county commission chair or commission designee, I guess, shall receive and investigate the complaint and otherwise served and act in the role of investigator. That part I have trouble with. I would not want to be investigating and putting our law director or anyone that I just, as a chairman, I don't feel like I'm qualified to be an investigator of any complaint that might come up. But I guess it does say you can.
Or designee.
Designee.
It can't be ignored.
Yeah, there could be a complaint against me.
Yeah.
And there's got to be some kind of mechanism in place to look at that.
So
That was there before. There's always that concern. My office may need policing too.
So in this, what it's saying is the commission can designate. It doesn't have to be the chair.
Yeah.
And that's, if that case ever does arise, I'm sorry, I would recommend you go outside and hire a private attorney to look at it. I really do. I'd hate any
Or
one person
designate.
on this body or any employee here, even HR, to be put in those shoes. So, if that does occur, I think it'd probably be best to have, legal counsel take a look at that.
So we could actually add that to the language to make it more clear. When it says chairman or designee.
It's got designee in there.
Yeah, it does. It's got.
Including outside counsel.
Well, if you want to, but I mean,
Yeah.
designee can be picked by the chair. That's the
Yeah.
way it's worded right now.
Yeah.
The chair can just say, look, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to investigate the law director or anybody. I just think, I think we should hire. And then we go through the same process we have for hiring outside counsel that's already established. It would require county commission vote.
I think it says commission designee, so then that's the question I would have. How would the full commission?
Well, I'm sorry, are you at 6?
Yes, sir.
The way I read that is like it could be any one commissioner. So that's why I was talking about
Okay.
clarifying.
Commission designates a person, is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It could be outside counsel.
But how would we, if it's I guess my question is, how would we all discuss it? It seems like it,
Just like we do any other, we need to hire outside counsel, and that would be.
on an issue,
and
okay.
that-
We don't really need to discuss the issue.
we need to discuss the issue, we need to hire outside counsel, and the chairman would, at that point, be on his own to hire outside counsel.
Okay.
I hope that never.
No, that's good. No,
I'm
I-
not sure if that
No.
issue, just in case it does, and I don't want anyone to think my office is
No.
beyond reproach.
No, I have, thanks for answering my questions.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Chairman.
All right, we got a motion by
I would-
Commissioner Mead and a second by Commissioner Jameson.
I would also point out that option, which I hope would be very, very rare we'd have to utilize, okay, if we use outside counsel instead of assigning somebody in county government, okay, it also maintains attorney-client privilege over the information until a decision is actually made to go public. And so that would be the way to go. It wouldn't be really good for a commissioner, be it the chair or anybody else, to be involved, but the commission can, just using our normal process, approve the hiring for a specific purpose without discussing any merits or details of the case.
Well, we do that.
We do it all the time.
The other situation that, is brought up by time ago is the need for supervisors to approve outside employment or secondary employment. And the rationale for that was our safety-sensitive employees taking jobs with another ambulance service, or our sheriff's deputies are working part-time job. They come to work for us, they're exhausted, they're driving a patrol car, they're driving an ambulance at high speed, red lights, blue lights, and they don't have enough rest. So we wanted to monitor that, but what I did there is insert that only applies now, Commissioner Wandell, to safety-sensitive employees. And those are your people that I think the Supreme Court rule is that by their very nature of their job, it's the peril of risk, or the danger of risk is great in those. So we added that not all employees now would have to have approval for secondary employment, only those with safety-sensitive positions. So Nathan and the sheriff, and I think Gary Long has a few safety-sensitive employees, and Mr. Crowley has animal control. There are a couple of guys down there that are safety-sensitive employees. Any other questions there on this?
Did you want to speak, Mayor?
I just have a couple of comments. I don't have an issue with that, but I think there are some safeguards that need to be put in place or language clarified. I think there does need to be immediate notification if an ethics complaint is filed. So there should be, it shouldn't be, dependent upon, is it addressed, is it not addressed? I think there should be immediate notification, so there are two parties that are aware. So if that's the law director, and maybe that's in there, I don't know which.
Yeah, it says 10 days now. Do you want that shorter?
I think it should be just for, it's nothing personal, it's just,
If there's
checks and balances as the word you used, so. And then the other thing, that, and maybe I'm focusing too much on this, but I think some of the points that I made at the Ethics Committee meeting as we discussed this is I don't think we as a county want to be in the position of investigating anyone. Investigating is the job of the Sheriff's Department. Investigating is the job of the District Attorney General. Investigating is the job of the State Election Commission if it's a campaign finance issue. And I think the intent and the feeling I got from our ethics meeting is that the ethics are about guiding citizens when citizens believe that elected officials or department heads or folks representing the county have misbehaved or stepped outside of the bounds. And I think it's there that Jay would be an appropriate person, as he knows that, oh, Bob, that's an election issue, or that's the DA, here's the address, here's how you can get in touch with the District Attorney General. But I'm very sensitive to taking on the responsibility as a county, with you ultimately being responsible as the county commissioners for an investigation. And so I would just like, to convey that I think this is more of a review and guidance for the citizens who may have an issue. And then the other issue is, by private act, our law director does represent us, and we are not allowed to go outside and seek legal counsel, as the private act says, unless we're willing to pay for it ourselves or appear before commission. If the law director does receive the complaint and he is in a position where he might have to investigate, or he's advising a citizen against an elected official or a member of the county staff or director or department head, then you have a situation where the department head there may be a conflict that exists. So the law director at that point is kind of, whoever it is in a position of, I'm representing an interest over here, which is an ethics interest, which may be in opposition to the interest of an elected official or a department head. And so you may want to contemplate that in how that's addressed. And I don't know, maybe Jay has a suggestion on that. Maybe it's, you have a fund that's available, and if it's something that's in the elected official's official capacity, I know we had a compromise worked out where I have access to such funds, which I have rarely needed. But maybe you have something, because if you're asking an elected official to go possibly 30 days without the ability to come for commission and ask for some legal advice, that kind of puts that, I mean, I'm looking at all the what-ifs. And so maybe that's something that should be contemplated. If you want to keep the law director in the position of doing the review and the guidance, you know, what's the safeguard? Do you say, hey, go see Phil Cry, or if there's a question, or, you know, I don't know. There's always there's many what-ifs, and it seems like Anderson County is a magnet for all the what-ifs that happen. But that's just another concern that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate those comments. They come up from time to time. I'll try to take them one by one here. We can't be in the business of doing nothing, okay? We all know notice is everything on cases against county governments or any governmental entity. 42 U.S.C. 1983 Civil Rights Acts are all about prior notice. When we're put on notice, something has to be done, okay? We just can't turn a blind eye and say, go see this person, go see that person. It doesn't work that way. We've had, and you've seen these cases before, we've had cases where things have been reported to elected officials and things have not happened and lawsuits have happened. I don't like these cases at all. I despise them. I really hope, I'd love to see no more ethics complaints ever come to my office, but I don't know anybody else that can handle them. Second of all, we do investigations, unfortunately. We've got two, 3 personnel policies that give HR the ability to investigate. It's a word I don't like, but we can call it a review if you want to. It has to be done. You just cannot turn a blind eye to these things, and you can't do nothing. That makes the situation worse. That's when damages arise. That's when we are on the hook, and that's when we'll have to pay. The representation of the law director, we've had this before. Some people don't understand my job, but maybe it's a little bit clearer when I explain to you the hierarchy. My number one client, my number one priority client is the entity itself, Anderson County government. An entity that can't act on its own. It relies on you and its elected officials to act. That's my number one client. Number 2, it's the county commission, the mayor and the elected officials under that, and way down below that, it's the employees, okay? That's the kind of echelon that I'm working under. It's very similar to corporate counsel. There's a special provision in the Board of Professional Responsibility rules. Those are the rules that govern lawyers that talks about the difficult job not only corporate counsel has investigating board members or investigating employees of a corporation when, in a sense, you represent them. But they carved out exceptions, and those exceptions exist in the BPR rules. There's also a large section in the preface section about governmental entities being organizational clients. And at that point, that's when you look at who is your ultimate client, Anderson County. Who's your second level? County Commission. Then the mayor, the elected officials, the department heads, the supervisors, the employees. It goes like that. If it became an issue, and I'm always very conscious of this, if I knew about it, okay, then I would recuse myself. There's no doubt about that. Or I would advise them, in most cases, you need to seek outside counsel, and I bring it to you and say, look, this person, this happened in their official capacity, they need outside counsel. But now, understand, and I think all of you will understand, most of these ethics complaints are not in the performance of their official job functions. They're not part of their job description. They're not a statutory requirement. They're not an official function. When you act outside your official job function, you're not acting for Anderson County, okay? That's a different situation. Then you've got to remember, and I hope this never happens to me in Anderson County while I'm here, is I do have ouster power. Along with myself and the District Attorney General, we do have the power to conduct ouster investigations, subpoena witnesses, and prosecute these matters. The other thing that comes into mind, and there's a case on point that discusses this, if you have anybody else do these reviews or investigations, however you want to do it, that is not an attorney and you don't have an attorney-client relationship, these records become public, okay? We saw that before when HR does these investigations. That's a problem. Some of these things may be frivolous, okay? Somebody then knows of one, they file a public records request, they have to turn over every piece of documentation. When it's under the county attorney's office, when it's under your attorney, it becomes attorney-client work product. This happened to the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee got sued by the Tennessean newspaper. They wanted copies of an investigation that the state attorneys did for the Department of Personnel, and it had to do with a lot of various things. Well, they wouldn't cough them up because they were very hazardous to the professional lives of a lot of people involved that were implicated and were not at fault, and some were at fault in this. This case went all the way to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals determined this is attorney-client work product. It is confidential. Again, I don't like these cases. I wish we didn't have to do it. The state of Tennessee, the General Assembly mandated that we have an ethics policy, and unfortunately, we have to look into them. I don't like the word investigate either, but in a sense, that's what we're doing. We're looking into these things. We've got, I think, 2 or 3 personnel policies that give the HR department authority to investigate various things. And thank gosh, it's not something I have to spend my time on. Kim picks them up, and usually they're minor employment type situations, and I just don't have the time to spend and I wish we never had another ethics complaint again, but they seem to happen. They seem to happen, unfortunately, during election season. And a lot of them, I can tell you from past experience, are absolutely meritless, have absolutely nothing. They don't fall within the ethics policy, and they're there for one sole purpose, to embarrass someone. But the funding is just exactly what we do under the Private Act. I'll come in here when we need outside counsel. I'll bring it to County Commission. It's not something new to any of y'all, and we'll ask for funding. I usually give you a confidential email and explain to you, but I appreciate the concerns the mayor brought out. They're all concerns. They're concerns I had. They really are. But unfortunately, it is the way it is in a litigious world, and when we do nothing and we have knowledge of a deficiency in our work, that just compounds the problem, unfortunately. We have to look into them, and hopefully, when we do look into these things, we can clear these people and it goes no further. If not, then it'll simply be referred to the proper source, whether that be the DA, County Commission for censure, DA for ouster, myself for ouster, the Election Commission, State Election Commission, or the Comptroller's Office in the case of fraud. But anyway, I'll be glad to answer your questions. These are not good cases at all. Anyway, I'm here to answer your questions.
Any other discussion? Mayor?
Maybe, if you pass this tonight, maybe you would allow me to work with Jay on some language. I would prefer some language that would clarify the review portion, so review for purposes of referring to the proper department. As he said, he does have power of ouster. If that is something where he believes it would need to kick into an investigation, if he believes it would be a case that would involve ouster, for instance, then there would be a notification process, and then, at that point, it would become whatever he would need to do in an ouster. If that's investigate, if it's do background or interviews at that point. But I think the initial receipt could just be a review for guidance to the proper authority. And then if not, maybe there's that one extra step for the next, if he believes it's something that falls under his department, that would involve an investigation.
Let's talk about this. I mean, we passed it back and forth for months. I'd like to get, is 10 days too long? Would y'all like to see a shorter period of time? Would 5 days be appropriate? I mean, is that something that people are hung up on? Because that's a number I think that it was just reasonable to give somebody a chance to take a look at this. And would you like to term this person the reviewer instead of investigator in Section 7? I mean, I'm open to, I want to make this work, and I want to get it off center. I hate seeing these lingering issues, but it's totally up to you. If the mayor would like to see this reduced to 5 days or 3 days. 3 days is a little tough sometimes for me, especially if I got hit with something the week before county commission. It's extremely hard for me to do a thorough job of looking into it. But I'm certainly willing to call this person, instead of investigators, it says here, I think the working copy is it's blank. We can call it the reviewer or receiver or something. Is that
I'm
softer term?
No, go ahead.
Commissioner McCamey.
Would it be appropriate to just refer this to the county commission without a recommendation, allowing the mayor and the
I'll work with her. I work
county
actually
attorney
really good with Terry, and I want to get this off center. And
before the full commission on
Terry,
the 21st.
if there's any way possible, can you shoot me some stuff and we'll get this worked out and bring it back to you?
We
You
do.
got a motion here.
We do.
We did, but I just made a motion to refer it to the county commission.
Commissioner Meaders.
President?
Yep, referring to the commission.
It's not a defer, it's a referral?
We're referring it to the county commission without a recommendation, pending an agreement between the mayor and you, and working together to come back with something on the 21st, and we'll vote on it at that time.
Have a motion and a second to refer. There's no discussion on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I want
Motion
you to
passes.
understand, Mr. Chairman, members of this body, we're both extremely busy. We work over here weekends, both of us do. We work over here early in the morning to late. I mean, I was getting emails from her this morning long before 8 o'clock. So I know we'll try our best to get it done, but it may be something that I don't get to you until the weekend. Send it out by email. It probably won't be in your agenda packet. I know my tomorrow is just, I had 6 cases in court today, and I can't promise you this will be in the agenda packet on Wednesday. And I don't want to even speak for the mayor. I know she'll work as hard as she can to give me some recommendations.
Well, even if we don't have it, we could have discussion and then.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Jay, I think you're still up.
The first item I had on, real quick, I think Dave, General Clark did a good segue. The opioid litigation. Number one here, we got a request from the State Attorney General to opt in or opt out of their lawsuit. You heard General Clark talk about, we authorized him to file a lawsuit on our behalf. We're not represented by the State Attorney General's office. So I immediately went to General Clark and asked his opinion, and he called their chief legal counsel, and he said to do nothing. So, but the way I read it, the common class action lawsuit is, if you don't specifically exempt yourself, you're in. So we may be in both lawsuits, and we'll let the attorneys work that out. But I got a form. It was sent to me directly from the Attorney General, and I wanted to get your advice on it. But the advice from General Clark is to not exempt ourselves in it, and the general rules on class action lawsuits will still be in that one too, although our primary one is the one with the 14 district attorneys. I don't think that requires any action on your part, but I wanted you to know I'm not going to do either one, if that's okay. Okay. Don't be thinking we get 2 pots of gold in the rainbow, but who knows? Number 2, the senior center lease. As you know, we're in the process of doing something for the seniors. I know everybody wants to help them out, but we've got to have them space secure until we can move wherever we go in the future. But I talked to Ms. Portwood. She's okay with a month-to-month. If that's okay with this body, I'll just draft a short month-to-month provision in there, have her sign it, and that way we don't hold the building for a year or anything like that. We'll just go month-to-month. Is there any concerns on this body, or do you want me to secure the building for a year?
I would, myself personally, I would prefer a year,
Okay.
provided the month-to-month, if she decides to sell, she gives us a month to,
Well, remember, we took that out. She got upset with that, but we wanted to make sure our seniors had a place, and you heard Sheree tonight that she may have some grants in jeopardy there. So, I don't think Ms. Portwood was happy with that when she finally read it that way, but she is receptive to helping our seniors. She's a very good person. But I can do it either way. I can redraft another year extension onto the existing contract or lease that we have. Now, we're talking about the existing senior center, or we can go under a month-to-month, whatever you prefer. The year, locking it up for a year is one thing with a 30-day cancellation period. We could do that, but I need some direction, and I'll get that in to you before county commission. That lease expires into this month, so we don't have time to pass it back and forth.
Commissioner McCamey?
The present lease was a month-to-month, but it was guaranteed for 1 year.
Yes, sir.
So it would be the same thing, we would
Yes, sir.
guarantee it for a year, but we could give 30 days notice and opt out of the lease. That's what I would recommend, Mr. Chairman. So
Make a motion.
Got a motion and second. Discussion on the motion. Commissioner Wandell.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from the mayor. Since this department falls under the mayor's purview, I'd like to hear her recommendation on what she'd like to see.
The way I see it right now, it's gonna be exactly the way it is now, except we're gonna extend that for a year, contingent upon what Sheree and the mayor say.
Yeah, I did talk to Sheree about this, and the agreement that we signed is let me read here, it says, it's for a 1-year period with a guaranteed option to renew for an additional 1-year period upon written agreement by the parties. Leaseor agrees leasee may terminate within 30 days written notice to leaseor at any time during the lease. And so those provisions that we adopted last time, I think, are good going forward. So that's what I expressed to Jay, was that we would notify her to extend it that year.
Or is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We're on the same page.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chairman.
sounds good.
Commissioner Anderson, did you want to speak?
I was just gonna ask whether, either way, it would still be 1,500 a month, whether it was.
Yeah, we're not gonna
months-
change the
rate's not
consideration.
changing. Okay.
Anything else? Did you get the motion in the second?
I'm going to get the second.
Commissioner Yeager. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, number 3, I sent you an email on this unauthorized parking at 205 Main Street. Didn't have a majority refer to me, respond. I did have 8, and so I'm looking for direction. I did see Bear. I think, was it the chairman asked me to talk to Bear. I talked to Bear about it. He said he would approach the individual, but I haven't heard back from him. Do you want me to handle this situation, unauthorized parking, try to work out a lease for space, so you can give that money however you want to any department, or it can go into the general fund? But we need to do something. We're on notice, again, that they're on our property. There's a liability issue. They continue to put cars up there. They're in the middle of model change. There's new and used vehicles coming in each day, and they park on our property every day. So I would like to do one way or the other. Commissioner Scott said fence it off. We can do that if a majority so decides, but there is an opportunity to lease this and get some contract in place that has our typical liability protection release is embodied in it. But it's up to this body. I need some direction on that.
Commissioner Meade.
Well, as I said in the email when I responded to Jay, I think we really need to have Jay go ahead with this, because once we have an agreement in place, then there's the liability issues. If something happens to them or their personnel and our property go away, because they become responsible for their property and their personnel. It also gives us possibility of a small, income to use for something else. But
Could offset our
But really, the
senior
most important thing is having a contract in place means if they have something happen to their property or their personnel while they're doing this, we don't get sued. They would be subject to the suit, not the county.
This has been going on for some time. Myself and Commissioner McCamey went up there and talked to them, what was it, 2 years ago? And they just kept inching back. They know we've got an issue with it, but
They're almost into the area that we have leased now.
yes, sir,
to
they are.
David Landreth for
It's,
buses.
and remember that lease has a guaranteed ingress egress in there.
Right, and they keep easing down into where he gets in there and cannot turn his buses around, so it's creating a problem there with the lease that we already have.
Something we should have handled already.
Yeah, we need to move on it.
Commissioner Yeager.
Is there an opportunity to tell them not to be on the property at all?
Yes, we can just give them trespass notice if you want to do that.
I'm just,
Cars towed.
Yeah, but yes, that's legal, but I don't think we want to get into that. But again, there
Okay.
is a potential revenue stream with the ability to take care of the liability with a contract.
Yeah.
It's up to this body. I just want you to explore all options here.
Well, my
Commissioner
statement's
Wendell.
meant to be a motion that we come in support of the mayor's actions as he described in his email and he just discussed with us.
become mayor?
I don't want that title. She does a great job. We'll leave her with that. My job's plateful, believe me.
you're making a motion, Commissioner Meade, is that what you just?
Yeah, a motion of support and approval for the law director to approach the car dealer about a contract.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second by Commissioner Anderson. Get that? Commissioner Wendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My response wasn't to be against Jay's request, and he's already addressed it. I wanted to see if we could have a discussion with the folks parking the cars there. My first question is from a liability standpoint. I mean, they're parking their cars on our property. I don't see why we would be liable for anything. They're trespassing, not us. So for us to use the caveat of we need to get this taken care of because of a liability issue, I guess I can go park in Commissioner Meade's yard, and because he didn't have an agreement, he's liable. No, that's not the way it works.
It
It's your
is. In
property.
fact, it is
It's
true.
your
If you park on
property.
my property,
It's
I'm
your
liable.
property, and if I make a problem on your property, that's on me, not you. That's the way I see it, and I may be wrong. But I'm not here to argue that. I'll just say that I'm in support of it, as long as the mayor's involved, and Jay, you're involved, and, I don't want the business owner to think we're sitting here trying to, strong arm or take these kinds of acts. We want to be corporate, business-minded.
I agree. I agree
And
100%.
look, if you and the mayor or whoever this body chooses can go sit down and talk to them, work out an arrangement for rent to park cars, hey, great, they're happy, we're happy. If you can work out an arrangement to sell 205 Main for a certain price, that'd even be
Just
better.
work that in too.
Yeah, we can skip the agreement, all lease, rent, whatever. But that was the intent.
Oh,
And
no-
it certainly
nobody's
wasn't
challenging
challenged.
that.
I appreciate you looking out for us. But wouldn't our insurance cover us if somebody got hurt? Truth is, somebody could walk through there now and fall and break an ankle.
Property loss and casualty.
We're not liable for that.
This is the strain thing, and I really don't want to talk about it a long time here, but again, I alluded to the fact that myself and Robert know about this. We actually approached them, and we just got through with a discussion about notice, and they continue to do it, so we need to do something.
I'm in support of the motion. I just, I don't know if Mr. Chairman, Mayor has anything she'd like to add before we take a vote, just in case, but I'll support the motion as presented by Commissioner Meade.
Repeat the motion.
Motion is to allow the law director to approach the car dealer in a civil way that he normally does, okay? and let them know that we have a concern about them using the parking lot at the 205 building, address. And it's also it's encroachment upon the leasee that does parks the bus over there, and that we need to have a contract in place in order for them to continue using it. Even then, it will be subject to them not interfering with the bus parking. And he sent out an email where he discussed a lot of this.
And if he doesn't want to do a contract, we can just tell him that, hey, it's time to move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But believe me, every one of my dealings, especially with our citizens, are very professional.
You okay with that, Mayor? Any other discussion? Oh, Commissioner Anderson? No, did you, Commissioner Priest?
Let me send you an email, what Bear told me. And,
Okay.
I'll bring it back to the whole body, or in fact, I can send the whole body. Bear gave us some suggestions on pricing.
Yeah.
He's in that business, and he kind of knows.
Yeah.
Commissioner Priest?
Yeah, the contract will set the boundaries.
Yes, sir.
And he will be agreeing with us and we're agreeing with him.
Absolutely.
A mutual agreement on the
agreement, yes, sir.
boundaries.
Perfect way of putting it, Commissioner
Yeah.
Priest.
We can do something like a $50 a car user fee. When he sells the car, we get $50 for the county or something.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I might go buy one then.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I like it. Support the senior center. You buy a car here, give us $50. Last item I have is, the mayor was very successful in negotiating a lease agreement with the city of Clinton. She was able to negotiate 4.56 acres in the Carden Farms Industrial Park for the sum of $1 a year for 20 years, with an option to renew for another 20 years, with a third option of up to 20 years, with a third option of if the parties agree. We want to appreciate the city of Clinton and Mayor Burton. They worked well with us on this. It's a good piece of property. But anyway, here's a draft lease. Anyway, what else can I put in here? We can pay $20 up front, secure it for 20 years. It's a lease, it's not a purchase. It'll start on November 1. Couple conditions: we have to use it for an animal shelter or animal care purposes. If we don't, it automatically reverts to the city of Clinton without any additional legal process. If we continue to use it for an animal shelter and animal care purposes, the leasee, that's us, will be entitled to an additional option for 20 years. After the expiration of the second lease term, we can get the third period, and that's negotiating with the city of Clinton and upon approval of each governing body. So theoretically, we could tie this property up for 60 years. I think the mayor has worked on some plans to invest some money in this, to get a structure down there, to take care of a very needed facility for this county. This will be the first real animal shelter the county's ever had. We pieced together something at Blockhouse Valley. It's just not adequate. And we've got a lot of citizen volunteers that have helped immensely with this project, given their time, their money, and it's time we do something. Former Commissioner Blosky is still involved to this day. She lives in Florida, but she still helps with this process. And I can tell you from my own point of view, professionally and personally, I'd love to see this happen, and appreciate the mayor for doing it. I want to point you to Section 6. It's all the claims are on us. Okay, something happens there, it's not on the city of Clinton. It's on us, and that's the way it should be. Okay.
Have a motion, second discussion. Commissioner Wandell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay,
Yes, sir.
So this is to put, obviously what you said, in an animal shelter.
Yes, sir.
So what happens to the, are we gonna put structures on it, I assume?
Yes, sir, and if we're also not successful in, I mean, we did not put a provision in here about a time frame This would just allow us to go on site and, you know, do some site plan and work there. But of course, I'm sure if funding doesn't come through, if we don't get some grants to put a facility there, then we would just give the property back. We would terminate the lease, or Clinton would revoke the lease.
Cancel in 90 days
Yeah.
notice.
So I guess, you know, say you get the money and the funding rather, and then the decision's made to build a shelter of whatever size. How does that work? Does this agreement cover us putting a shelter on this property?
Yes, it's basically saying the only reason, the only way we have this lease for $1 is if we're using it for a shelter.
Okay. And then who owns the shelter after that? And who's responsible for the cost of the shelter?
We
That'll
would.
be us.
Okay.
We would.
And when the agreement ends for whatever cause, what would happen to the building then?
Well, at that time, have you negotiated this I can only talk about default law in here.
Well,
Not saying it's gonna happen, but
Sure.
it's just,
well, when I was at the meeting of city council, they talked about doing it in 20-year blocks, and I guess, I mean, I could go back and say, you know, can we just continue to renew? I guess they want a provision in there in case, say, something happens and the county neglects the facility or abandons the facility or something along those lines. But if we need to clear that language up, we can.
I'm
I
just
mean, I don't
curious
think
if-
it's,
I mean, if you make a $500,000 investment,
Right.
$200,000 investment, and then we have to leave for whatever reason, how does that building, you know, how's it?
Becomes part of the land. It's a fixture to that land.
Okay.
But we're protected here for a minimum of 40, and then we can go back and we can it has a provision where we can negotiate an additional term. It could keep going and going and going as long as the governing bodies of both the county and the city agree to it. So I think we could outlive any structure's life.
I'm in support of it. I just had
Thank you,
those
sir.
questions. Thank you.
good questions.
Any other question?
You got the motion, the second on that?
I made the motion, Director Yeager second.
Commissioner McCamey made the motion and Commissioner Yeager seconded. Any other discussion?
Well, I just got to point out that the purchasing committee addressed the same thing today and unanimously voted to support the concept of going ahead with this agreement.
That's correct. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, Claxton School Zone safety issues requested by Chairman Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is primarily for the signage in Claxton coming out of Raccoon Valley. I asked about a year or two ago of the school board to address this issue. This is an issue that's responsible for the school system. They're required to have the proper signage. There's no lights there, period, and no lights. And, you know, we might have heard that, well, they're going to remodify down at the intersection and things of that nature, but, you know, I'm concerned. I'm getting a lot of calls and emails, social media. Folks are concerned with, there's no, the sign that's there is maybe, you know, a foot by a foot, and it looks like they found it at the dump, that you can't even read it. So I would like the school system to address the safety issues coming off of Raccoon Valley into Edgemore and Clinton Highway, and I'd like to see a flashing sign put up and installed. So that's my request. There are some other requests that I have in the school system. I've heard a lot of people having accidents and almost accidents where we have the 2 lanes turning from Knoxville at the red light. The second lane on the outside, Mayor, if you know anybody on TDOT, and when you turn both lanes now, the lane turning at the same time coming from Clinton, there's almost head-on collisions because there's no structure to how you turn. So the second lane swings way out and almost runs in head on, and there's been a couple accidents that way, and I don't know what we can do about that other than get with TDOT and see if they can put some striping down. I know the sheriff's office has been out there a little bit more, and we appreciate that. And Sheriff, anything you can do, I could just communicate to you that the citizens would like to see people come from Raccoon Valley and just hit it, because they have no signage, and in their minds, there's no school zone, even though there's a school there and everybody else is going slow. So if we could somehow address those concerns, so I guess I'll make a motion to forward this request to full commission so we can address it with the school department. So I make a motion, we forward the Claxton School Zone safety issues to full commission for the regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
I want to ask you a question. Yes, sir. Have you mentioned this to the school department?
About 2 years ago, I notified school board member Joe Williams. Joe Williams forwarded on to Mr. Fogarty. Mr. Fogarty said he'd address it, and here we are a year and a half later, or a year later, I don't know.
Have you mentioned it to the director of school?
Yes, I have. I've emailed. I've also had verbal communications. If there's anything else I've left out, I'd be happy to do a current event on it and present it as well, if that would help speed up the process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Wait a minute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We got a couple other things. Sheriff, you sat here patiently all night. Is there something you wanted to say?
No, sir. I was just here for Commissioner Wandell's Claxton School Zone. We took a look. Claxton's really unique in the fact that it's on corner of major intersection. We've had 44 days of school, and just briefly, I just glanced at our statistics from over there. 44 days of school. We've had an officer, at least one officer there in the morning and the afternoons every day. And additionally, we've had 61 traffic stops during these 44 days of school. Of course, the issue is we got 17 schools across the county.
Yes, sir.
And it's tough to be everywhere at once, but it's definitely a concern of ours. And the recommendation that I had is the very thing he just said, that we need something on Raccoon Valley side.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say this isn't addressed to the sheriff's department. I mean, we appreciate your staff being out there, and I know you got to finish up there and then go to another area to service another school,
Correct.
School, and so timing is kind of tough. So I appreciate all you can do. I know your resources are limited, but I appreciate it.
It's one of our larger schools, and again, with the uniqueness of the intersection, we make it a priority.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Sheriff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make that point.
I really appreciate all the increased patrols that I see all over the county.
Well, we've strapped up almost every car we got, no matter what color. So,
and thank you for your action in my district. Lots of people are happy.
Yeah, good deal.
Thank you, sir.
One other thing is some good news, and this is for the Claxton area. The Planning Commission approved another 17-lot subdivision last
Excellent.
week.
I can't hear you. You talk in the thing. You turn and start talking to him.
The Planning Commission approved another 17-lot subdivision in the Powell community last week, so that's more growth. I think that Planning Commission, I'm just there, but those people, they do a great job. And then I understand that the Claxton Fire Department had an unfortunate accident, with one of their fire trucks. Is there anything that this body can do to help?
Mr. Chairman, fortunately, the young man was okay. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure I'll find out when I get home. My wife's chairman of the Claxton Volunteer Fire Department, and she'll be letting me know why didn't I capitalize on that question you just asked me. But I'll find out. I know it's a big hurt to them because they don't have that truck in service, and I'm pretty sure it was totaled. So I'll get you an answer, and I'll be happy to bring it back. And I appreciate you asking.
That's all I've got. Any old business?
Let me piggyback off your housing addition. There are 2 on Edgemore that are in the works as well.
2 houses or?
2 housing additions. I think about a 40-some addition up the hill.
Yeah.
And a couple hundred in the golf course in Centennial Village area. So we got some good growth going on in Oak Ridge too.
Yeah. Thank you. Any old business? Anything else to come before this committee? Thank you.